joining today. Very excited to have you here. Welcome to the webinar, Accelerating Solar Adoption in California, Understanding the Solar Access Act and the SolarAPP. We're so happy you could join us. My name is Emerald Sage. I use they, them pronouns. I am Vote Solar's Senior Regional Communications Associate, and I'll be moderating the webinar today and fielding questions, which for the time being, you can just put in the Q&A, and soon we'll have the chat working, so you can put them in there too. Today, we'll be covering the California Solar Access Act, the Solar Automated Permitting Program, aka SolarAPP Plus, and the funding cities can apply for. We have a panel of 5 incredible advocates, experts, and officials here today to talk with you and answer your questions, and they'll each speak for about 5 to 10 minutes with a Q&A at the end. First speaking is Cailey Underhill. Cailey is the Advocacy and Development Director of the Solar Rights Alliance, a statewide nonprofit association of California solar users. They include homeowners, renters, businesses, nonprofits, and more, plus people who don't have solar but are interested, or advocates. Cailey will be covering the California Solar Access Act. And then from Cailey, we'll go to Councilwoman Sue Noack. Councilwoman Noack was elected to Pleasant Hill City Council in 2014 and was mayor in 2016 and returned to the City Council in 2021. Councilwoman Noack helped Pleasant Hill City become the first city in the country to adopt the SolarAPP. She will share with us today the mayor's perspective on implementing the platform. After Councilman Noack, we'll hear from Ted Drago. Ted is the Deputy Director, Building Inspector of Simi Valley City Environmental Services Department. Ted was instrumental in the city becoming the 4th municipality in California and one of the first jurisdictions in the nation to formally launch SolarAPP. Ted will provide an overview of SolarAPP Plus, the future of it, and the building department perspective on the benefits. The 4th panelist is Ben Davis, a policy associate at the California Solar and Storage Association, or CALSSA. CALSSA is the state's largest clean energy business group with over 550 member companies that contribute to growing local solar and storage market in California. Ben will be speaking to us about the economic and solar benefits of SolarAPP Plus. And our final panelist today is Adam Vanwinkle, who is graciously filling in for Lucio Hernandez, which you might have seen in our promotional materials. Adam has been with the California Energy Commission since 2014, working with the Renewable Portfolio Standard and moving into solar policy, starting with NSHP and now with the CalAPP team. He will be discussing CalAPP and SB 379 reporting requirements. So now I'm going to share my screen and some slides and pass it over to Cailey.
All right. Well, again, welcome, folks, and thank you so much to Emerald and Vote Solar for organizing this webinar. Again, my name is Cailey Underhill, and I'm here with the Solar Rights Alliance. Again, for anyone who's unfamiliar, we are the nonprofit association of California solar users, and our mission is to defend the right to make energy from the sun. And so I'm here to talk with you today because one of the biggest obstacles to rooftop solar growth is the cost and time that it takes to get a permit for solar panels and batteries. And Emerald, if you want to advance a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. So it's actually twice as expensive to go solar in California as compared to many other developed places because of permitting costs here. It drives up the overall cost of going solar. So you can see in this graph from the International Renewable Energy Agency that the typical cost of a rooftop solar project in the state of California is around $22,000. In Japan, $13,200, and in Germany, $9,600. So streamlining the permitting process can make it faster and easier for residents to go solar here in California. And the Solar Access Act, otherwise known as SB 379, was recently passed into law to help make that happen. So I just want to talk with you a little bit about what SB 379 requires. So SB 379 requires cities and counties to streamline and automate their rooftop solar and storage permitting. So just breaking down a little bit what that means. It means that permitting for both rooftop solar panels and solar storage needs to do the following. It needs to be online. It needs to be instantaneous and automatic, and it needs to include plan review. And so the law says that cities and counties have two paths to comply. The first option, specifically outlined in the law, is to use free federal software called Solar Automated Permit Processing Plus, otherwise known as SolarAPP Plus. The second path to compliance is for cities and counties to enhance your current software system to match the capability of SolarAPP Plus. So that's what's outlined in the law, either using the free federal software or enhancing whatever system you already have to match the capacity of that free federal software. So let's talk dates and deadlines. Cities and counties that are larger, that have more than 50,000 people, are required to comply with SB 379 by September 30th of 2023. So coming up here in a few months. Cities and counties that are a bit smaller, that have less than 50,000 people, are required to comply with the law by September 30th of 2024. So larger cities need to comply by September of this year. Smaller cities have an extra year to comply. But part of the reason we're here today is that there is a deadline coming up for all cities, all counties across the entire state of California, regardless of size. Every single city and county in the state of California is eligible for a grant to help them comply with the law. And the deadline for the grant is May 1st for all cities, all counties, all sizes. And so just want to walk you through a little bit more in terms of what that grant entails. So first things first, the maximum grant amount is $100,000, and it's based on population size. The great news here, I'm sure pretty much everyone here has either seen or completed a grant application at some point in time, myself included. This grant is not like any grant I've really seen before. It's just a 4-page checklist, and it can be completed in about 15 minutes. There's no grant writing necessary. It's literally checking a box. SolarAPP Plus or other. Those are the boxes to check because those are the paths to comply with the law. I do want to note here that the funding is first come, first served, and about half the funds are already gone. I also want to note, no, yeah, that's okay. That's a good point to bring up, that thousands of people across the whole state have signed a petition asking elected officials to streamline permitting, to move forward and comply with this law. And more than 60 organizations have signed a letter supporting this concept of streamlined permitting. So there is broad support across the state for this initiative. And lastly, I just want to point out here that this is a somewhat unique opportunity for a win-win-win. It's a win for cities because funding is available. You don't have to dig into your budget to be able to make this happen. It's a win for building departments. And we want to be really clear here that nothing that we're saying today is against building department folks. We know that folks in the building departments are working really hard. They have a lot on their plates. They're doing the best they can with what they have. There's a lot on their plates, and this is an opportunity to just remove some of what's on the plates of these building department folks so that instead they can take their time, their talent, their effort, and dedicate it to the many other things that also need their time and attention. It's also a win for residents because this makes it faster, easier, cheaper for average Californians to be able to go solar. And that's a big deal and something that can truly help your constituents. So we have here today a fantastic slate of panelists to speak to each of the perspectives that I've just outlined. And I want to hand it over first to Councilmember Noack to speak to the perspective of an elected official.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for inviting me to speak at this event. I spoke a couple of years ago with Secretary Granholm, and people might be wondering, why in the world do I get to do that? And I'm a council member in Pleasant Hill. For those of you who don't know, that is in Contra Costa County in the East Bay. And we consider ourselves the center of everything. But in this case, it really applies, as we were the first city in the entire country to actually use SolarAPP. And you might be asking, why did we get to do that? And we were smart enough to hire Jeff Simmons as our building official. And Jeff was in a large group that worked under then Vice President Biden's Sunshot program to try to accelerate the process for getting permitting done for solar. And the challenge to Sunshot was to be able to have permitting and installation sort of within 5 days. And that was the challenge. The SolarAPP was a group starting with a National Renewable Energy Lab and other private and public entities that all came together to put this SolarAPP together. And Jeff was part of that. And so as a result, who better to try it out and be the first ones to do it, but Pleasant Hill, who had hired Jeff Simmons, one of the masterminds of the program, to do that. So we hired Jeff in July 2020, and the first permit was issued in November 2020. So we've been at this a couple of years now. Pleasant Hill is only 34,000 people. So we are not large, but we have already issued 200 permits, applications under SolarAPP, and it has worked wonderfully. You know, for a city official, it's super important for us to have any online system work well, be efficient, productive, and not a lot of glitches. And the great thing about SolarAPP, well, the great thing, let's put it this way. SolarAPP is a very technical online tool. This is not to be used by homeowners. This is to be used by contractors. There's a lot of information, a lot of detail to be input, and Ted, I'm sure, is going to go into more detail on that. But it's also it's a smart app in that it stops. If errors are done, it stops you and says, here, you got a problem. Can't do it that way. You got to fix it now. And so the whole process is done. Payment is made and the permit is issued simultaneously. The great thing from an elected's perspective, it has worked really well. When we go out and our building folks have gone out to inspect the solar installations after they have been done, they have found very, very few problems. And that means the permitting process has worked really well because we don't see it until the end. So at the end, they go out. The only issues they have seen is when, because of supply chain issues, other equipment has had to be used. But the great thing again about SolarAPP is those revisions can be done, and it can be done online, and approval for those revisions can be done instantaneously as well. So that is great. But for an elected official, it makes it efficient, it makes it productive, and it's super, super great customer service wise. All the people that contractors and the homeowners that have gone through this process have been really pleased with it. So that's super helpful. You know, we're looking forward to further reiterations of this. Right now, it's only used for initial solar and recently added storage to that process. It doesn't work. It has to be rooftop. It can't be ground mount. So there are some issues, but I think with the success of this program, we will see more and more refinements to it and developments to it. Big factor for everybody, as Cailey was talking about, the cost of permitting. We don't always, as elected officials, you probably all know, we don't review and don't analyze your fee structure every year. So Pleasant Hill is just going through that process now to review all our fee structures. And so at the end of that, we will be able to sort of substantiate the savings that we have realized from SolarAPP through this permitting process. We're also have just started our online process for other building permits. And so combining those two and being able to integrate those two down the road, I think will save us even more and more money. And I expect other municipalities are following the same path. So from an elected's perspective, SolarAPP, free app, it works really well. And I'm sure Ted is going to speak to how well it works from a building official's perspective. But from an elected official, it's super important because it has worked well. It has delivered on what it's promised. It's effective, efficient, and it, in the long run, will save us and our customers, the community, lots of money. So with that, I will turn it over to Ted to talk a little bit more detail about this.
Thank you, Councilmember Noack. So how would you like to be given hundreds of staff hours to support your city's permit services? That's a huge thing, without any additional recurring budget costs. So that's another important thing. You don't have any recurring program costs with this. So, well, Simi Valley experienced this exact thing. When we adopted SolarAPP, back in late 2021, we ended up with another 1,000 staff hours of plan review. So essentially, it replaced our plan review and our permit processing services. And we offloaded all that extra labor, and we got about 1,000 staff hours back within the last year and a half. So it's been a huge success in that respect for us. So the question is, how does this actually work? So from the city's point of view, SolarAPP takes on the plan review and the approval portion of the permit process. So the developer, the installer, the contractor will upload their PV system design into the online web portal for SolarAPP. And the system will prompt them through the code compliance process, and the information needs to be shown in that application. So with that, SolarAPP will issue what is a SolarAPP approval number. That approval number will let us know as a jurisdiction that SolarAPP has found that to be code compliant. So Simi Valley has a specific use case. We take the SolarAPP approval documentation and the SolarAPP number, and we have the contractors put that into our web portal. We have our own online permitting system. So they immediately put that into, once they get it from SolarAPP, they put that information into our system, and they're issued the instant permit. So far, up until right about today, we have had 1,300 permits go through that system. And that's a huge success for us. And it saves us tremendous amounts of staff time. So it's also very important from the building perspective that we are getting good code compliance. When these documents come through, these systems are ready to go, ready to approve. And once they're built, they're easy to inspect for us. There's training that's available through SolarAPP. And with that, your inspectors as a building department will go through the basic training on how to read the SolarAPP compliance documents, because they're a little bit different from the single line diagrams they're used to seeing. It's been very easy. All of our inspectors have adapted to it very, very quickly. So with that, it works exceptionally well. There are things that it still doesn't do yet, like Councilmember Noack was saying. It doesn't handle some of the more complex ground mounted systems. It's strictly for rooftop solar and solar plus storage. It's very good at doing revisions too. You know, one of our biggest issues with these projects coming through is they have revisions in the field, and the revisions take extra administrative costs and loading on our end. So with that, SolarAPP handles those revisions very cleanly, very smoothly. So we've seen a lot of really good results with that. You know, with that also, when you're looking at SolarAPP for the future, SolarAPP has a substantial input from both industry, code officials, cities, other interested parties, a lot of stakeholders involved in that. And the governance process within SolarAPP, we are looking to have SolarAPP do a lot more work for us in terms of different types of systems, adding more functionality. So it's a moving, growing system. So in the future, we're going to see, for instance, electric vehicle charging stations. So you're putting EV stations into your home or possibly even other commercial areas. These will eventually be available in the system. We're looking for that, and there's going to be funding for that to move that forward. So this is a system which always keeps up to the latest codes, the latest standards for the things it's approving. There's no effort on the jurisdiction side to have to retrain staff and deal with all the issues that come with the rapid changes in solar PV development. So with the city of Simi Valley's use case, to give you an idea, we do between 500 and 1,000 PV permits per year, given the year. About half of our PV permits are approved using SolarAPP at this point in time. And again, we've got about 1,000 staff hours back on the processing and plan check side for that. When we get full adoption, which means all of our contractors move to be using the system, we will probably get one full-time equivalent employee back. And that's huge for us. So being a smaller city with limited staff, we do have a lot of things other than PV we have to be doing. And streamlining is so important, but yet very costly for a city if you don't have automation. So the key thing is this system provides the automation, provides the good code compliance, gives you back your staff's time, and you can apply to other things. It's a huge win so far for us, and it's only going to get better. One thing with the inspection side. So typically our projects, we're seeing about a 75% first time approval before SolarAPP. After SolarAPP, we bumped up to 85% of first time approval. So that's great. That means both the customers and the inspectors are going in there one time for most of these cases, approving these installations as being code compliant and on to the next thing. So we see the results, and they're substantial, really positive results. Another thing with SolarAPP, in the customer service side, we're seeing a lot of permits being generated through our system, not during city business hours, but in the evenings and the weekends. So it's really convenient for our customers to log on anytime and get these things done, not waiting for staff to be there, not waiting for the city to be open. So it's a huge thing. So really, when it comes to our experience, I can't say enough about how easy, how simple, and how functional this process is. It's great. One thing I like to say, and I keep saying to a lot of the staff and people I talk to, is this is essentially money sitting on the table waiting to be picked up and put it to good use. So this is easy stuff for us. We had a very minimal re-engineering time for all our business processes because we're used to taking in things differently. I think we probably spent maybe a week of staff time, putting up a new permit type on our website and reorganizing our processes to deal with this new way of doing things, and staff adapted very quickly to it. So again, this is a great process now. It's a great service now, and it's only going to grow in the future with new additions for technical requirements for different types of systems that currently SolarAPP doesn't use. And again, most of our existing PV work is able to go through the system right now. So for Simi, we're getting probably about 5% of our projects as ground mounts. Most everything is rooftop solar, and so it works really, really well for us. I would expect for most jurisdictions like us, you're going to have great success with it. It's just that simple. So later we'll have any questions. If you have, certainly ask. Right now, I want to turn this over to Ben Davis and have his input on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Ted. All right, next slide, Emerald, please. All right, so from the perspective, and there's some formatting on this slide that got a little, was a little off, but the graph is the important thing. So from the perspective of the installer and the homeowner, SolarAPP allows solar to be installed faster, and it lowers the cost of going solar. And the combination of these two benefits is that more properties go solar, especially low-income homes. So this slide shows the conventional permitting time, so not SolarAPP, the conventional permitting times for residential solar systems. The median permitting time for a solar-only system is 13 days. The median permitting time for a solar and storage system is 19 days. This is across California, so there's obviously a lot of variation building department to building department. And that time is not only long, but it's indicative of a bigger problem, which is the time and resources it takes from the solar company, which drives up the cost. And sometimes it's you submit the application and the building department just has a ton of backlog and it takes 2 weeks to get a response. Sometimes, though, there is a lot of back and forth in those 2 weeks, right? This isn't only on the building department. Sometimes the solar and there is a correction and there's a lot of back and forth with the installer to fix it. And all of that is time solar companies are spending on permitting, not installing solar. So from the industry point of view, the bars on the far right are especially concerning. 1 in 10 solar only systems and 1 in 7 solar and storage systems takes more than 2 months to permit. And one reason this is alarming is that nationwide, homeowners cancel approximately 10% of projects. And the biggest reason for the cancellations are issues with permitting. And with SolarAPP, the permitting delays are eliminated and fewer projects are canceled. And that, of course, results in more solar being installed. All right, so let's look at the costs. Next slide. Great, please. So Cailey, this is the same graph that Cailey shared. In the past decade, the cost of residential solar in the United States has dropped a lot, 64% over the past decade. And that is largely due to reduce costs and increase efficiencies of the solar panels and the hardware. You used to have one solar panel was 100 watts. Now one solar panel is 400 watts, and the price of the panel has not gone up 4 times. But the soft costs of solar, which are the costs other than the system hardware and the installation labor, they have stayed relatively constant. And while other countries have reduced their soft costs, they remain really high in the United States, especially in California. And that results in solar carrying a higher price tag here than the rest of the world. So we're just very excited about SolarAPP because by reducing the cost of permitting, which is one of those largest soft costs, SolarAPP can dramatically bring down the cost of solar in California. So this graph is based off of the International Renewable Energy Agency. The data are from 2020, and it's the cost of solar for a typical size system. We say that is 6 kilowatts. And as you can see, solar is more expensive in California than everywhere else. It's roughly double what it is in Germany, Japan, et cetera. So that's what we're aiming for. The lower bars are what we're aiming for, and it can, if we can lower the price of going solar, more people, more homes will make that investment. Next slide, please. So by automating permitting, SolarAPP lowers the cost of installing solar by a couple $1,000s. So in a city with typical permitting practices, SolarAPP can lower the cost of solar by $1,200. It's on the lower end. In a city or county with difficult permitting, and if the solar system comes with a solar battery, which is where a decent amount of permitting issues are today, then SolarAPP can reduce the cost of going solar by $5,100. All of these data are based off of a report we commissioned where we surveyed installers and looked at the cost of doing business. So there's a long list of the way SolarAPP reduces the cost of permitting, but I'll try to run through some of them quickly. There's fewer visits to the building department at the job site. There's standardized and faster processes to get the permit. And I'll say that the standardization is really key, because even in the many jurisdictions in California that have relatively fast permitting with straightforward processes, and there's a lot of jurisdictions, on this call right now that have relatively fast permitting, but there's still variation between jurisdictions, and a lot of variation, and that drives up costs. In Germany, from the previous slide, there is one state building department. So the process of getting a permit in Berlin is the exact same as the process of getting a permit in Frankfurt, is the exact same of getting a permit in Hamburg. And that is one reason why the cost of solar in Germany is so much lower. Another reason for the reduced cost is that there's no back and forth with the building department to discuss code requirements or redesign the system and resubmit the permit application. With SolarAPP, if the project isn't up to code, the software automatically issues a permit. If it's not up to code, it issues a correction, and the installer can update the project and resubmit it within minutes. There's no permitting delays, which that causes, when there are permitting delays, there's scheduling issues with sending out crews, and that drives up costs. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there are fewer project cancellations. Every time a project is canceled, not only is that less solar, but the installer has already sunk $1,000, $200,000 into the project, sometimes more. And those costs are essentially passed on to other customers that do go solar, which raises the cost for everybody else. Next slide, please. All right, and this is the last slide I have. So if we lower the cost of solar, more homeowners, especially low-income owners, become willing to go solar. And this is because while many homeowners and property owners install solar and storage to protect the environment or have power when the grid goes down, or just for their own personal reasons, if the economics of solar aren't attractive, most all homeowners won't make the investment. So the lower the initial upfront cost, the quicker the payback achieved from the lower energy bills and the more attractive the economics are. So that is what we see on this graph. We calculated out the increase in homes willing to go solar due to SolarAPP based off of the cost reductions on the previous slide and research from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory on solar customer sensitivity to prices. So that's what these data show. The ranges are due to variations between utilities. So as you can see in a city or county with a typical solar permitting processes, so adopting SolarAPP should result in, we predict, a 7% increase in middle-income homes willing to go solar. In a municipality with more difficult permitting processes, adopting SolarAPP should result in a 22 to 25% increase in homes willing to go solar and storage. And these figures are much higher for lower income homes as well. And then I'll wrap up by saying that these figures are very much on the conservative side. One of the impetuses for SolarAPP was San Jose, which built their own automated permitting system in 2015. And that resulted, according to the former mayor, in a 6-fold increase in solar permit applications, which is tremendous. So if we imagine what we could achieve, if we could replicate that across the state, I think that would be pretty phenomenal. And that's what we're trying to do with SolarAPP. All right, thank you. That's the conclusion of my slides. And now I'll turn it over to Adam Vanwinkle.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Adam Vanwinkle, and I'm one of the team members that administers the CalSSA program and the SB 379 guidelines. Here's a quick look at what I'm covering today. Some of the info was covered earlier, which was pretty well done. I'll overview the CalSSA program and then overview Senate Bill 379. First, let's start with the CalSSA program, which offers grants to cities and counties to adopt SolarAPP Plus or something similar and can be used to comply with SB 379. All California cities and counties are eligible to apply, as mentioned earlier, and the deadline to apply is May 1st, 2023. So that's coming up, and that is while funding lasts. The application is very short and easy to complete and submit. The application form is available on the program webpage displayed here. All right, next slide, please. The CalSSA grant program boils down to 2 options. Option 1 is to adopt SolarAPP Plus. Option 2 is to adopt a software that is functionally equivalent to SolarAPP Plus as defined by the list shown here on the slide. This list is pulled directly from our application form. Next slide, please. We have a simple application process for easy participation. Once you apply, we reserve funding. Then the applicant will complete all activities to adopt SolarAPP Plus or something similar of their choice. After full adoption, the awardee can then invoice the CEC for reimbursement of all eligible costs. The CEC will verify successful adoption. Next slide, please. Here's a quick look at the funding structure for CalSSA. The grant amount that we reserve is predetermined based on population size. The grant award sizes are the maximum funding amount. The actual amount paid will be based on the actual costs encountered during the term of the grant. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of what we can and cannot reimburse. This is a summary, and a complete list can be found in our program solicitation manual. We anticipate most applicants will use the majority of funding to reimburse staff resources costs for the integration into the jurisdiction system. We also allow for reimbursement of other costs such as training and education for staff and local installers. One important note is that we can't pay for activities that occur before you have executed a grant agreement with the CEC. So apply soon if you've already started. For jurisdictions that already adopted a platform such as SolarAPP Plus, there may still be opportunities to participate. For example, we provide funding for maintenance, which may include adding support for energy storage paired with the solar energy system permitting to the existing platform. Next slide, please. Here's a quick look at our application. This is all 4 pages here. We accept application submittals electronically via email. Applications will be reviewed and processed on a non-competitive first come, first served basis while funding lasts or until the submittal deadline. We've already received and approved over 165 applications worth nearly $10 million in funding. So about half the funding is still left. Next slide, please. Now I'll do a quick summary of Senate Bill 379 and the CEC's role. Here's a brief summary of the Senate Bill 379. The law went into effect in January and requires most California cities and counties to implement an online automated permitting platform such as SolarAPP Plus. The bill assigns the Energy Commission to adopt guidelines related to annual reporting and to facilitate this reporting. We're in the process of doing this now, and we'll be presenting guidelines at today's business meeting. And that business meeting is happening concurrently with this workshop right here. Next slide, please. Where are we at here? Can you go 2 slides back? One slide forward, and then one more slide forward. Oh, I have different slides. Okay. I'll go this way. We can, oh, and let me cover the compliance schedule. I don't know if you have the slides here. Okay, so I'll go here. I'll just talk about the compliance schedule. So exemptions to SB 379 apply is applied based on population size. For cities, those with a population of less than 5,000 are exempt. For counties, any population with less than 150,000 are exempt. Jurisdictions are expected to comply by September 30th of 2023 for cities with a population greater than 50,000. Cities with a population of 50,000 or less have an additional year until September 30th, 2024 to meet those requirements. The guidelines which are up for adoption today at CEC business meeting is to discuss the role in facilitating annual reporting on the number of permits issued and the relevant characteristics of those systems. They also outline the details and procedure for these annual reporting requirements. To receive the data in a uniform format and make it easier for our stakeholders, we're going to be utilizing an online data portal accessible through our SB 379 webpage. And that's currently being developed by our IT department at the CEC. Jurisdictions will submit data covering a full calendar year following the reporting period and submit reports annually until 2034 as prescribed in the bill. Next slide, please. Here we have a summary of the data we will collect, which includes a few basics like the jurisdiction name, the reporting year, the latest estimated population. We also collect the number of permits issued, separated by permits for solar or those used for storage paired with solar. Within each of these two categories, we will also collect the portion of the total use issued using an SB 379 compliant software such as SolarAPP Plus. The data collection process is intended to be quick and non-burdensome for jurisdictions, while still allowing us to understand trends and how the online platforms will ultimately help streamline the solar permitting process. These reporting requirements apply to all non-exempt jurisdictions, meaning cities above 5,000 in populations and counties above 150,000 in population. Next slide, please. So this wraps up our program overview, and here's some key information to stay informed and to follow up with other questions related to this program. You can see here that email at the bottom there. You can go ahead and email that if you have any questions regarding CalApp or SB 379, and we'll reply rather quickly to those. And this about does it, and I'm happy to take any questions that I could answer.
Great, thank you all. Wonderful information, all very helpful. We actually have a good amount of questions so far. So I'm going to start with this one in the chat from Doug Kinley. What is it like for retrofitting of existing structures or buildings? A lot of homeowners already have solar, and they want to hear the feedback on the process for seeking guidance on retrofitting.
I can hop in and address that real quick. So when it comes to having an existing solar PV system, and you're going to be adding to your existing PV or retrofitting your existing PV system, SolarAPP does not currently handle that type of system. Again, it's future functionality that is going to be built into the system. That's one of the things on the checklist that need to be done. But really, right now, SolarAPP is handling brand new installations. And then in the permit process and the inspection process, if there's a revision to that specific project that's brand new, that'll be handled by the system. But retrofitting older ones or altering existing systems is not yet part of SolarAPP.
Thank you. And then a follow-up that the same person asked, what is it like regarding any guidance for being compliant with local utility providers? To give an example, the electric company out there needs to be contacted when you add solar to your home.
I'll hop in on that one too, for just from the building official standpoint, because we see a lot of interconnections. So the contractor typically contacts the provider, and they deal with their point of connection and all the connection issues on that side. We release and final off the permit, and it's handed off to the contractor and the electrical purveyor to get that connected.
And if it's depending on the unique requirements, the SolarAPP, the onboarding team can customize, can provide some customization. I know when Sacramento County recently adopted SolarAPP, the utility here, SMUD, the county wanted the installer to upload a letter from the utility, so they built that into the software too. So it depends on Ted said it's the case probably 95% of the time, and the other 5% of the time depends on the unique circumstance for what's required.
And then we have a question from Greg Chanis. Apologies if I pronounce your name incorrectly during all of this. They asked, how do you integrate the app into projects that include solar as part of a larger renovation or new build project?
Well, I'll hop into that one when you're permitting different types of systems. So when you're doing, let's say, a tract, and we've had many tract homes in Simi that have been doing solar when the tract is being built or as part of a new building. We have options with that. So the jurisdiction can issue a combination permit or can issue a separate permit for the PV system. In either case, it can go through SolarAPP. The SolarAPP does the review establishes compliance, and then it can issue the permit. The jurisdiction can issue the permit, as these are separate, or in some cases, the jurisdiction wants to issue a combo permit. They could work that in their own systems. So it's pretty straightforward to do. We've done it several times, and it's a very smooth process for us.
All right, next question from Maria Laura. What are the estimated costs to implement SolarAPP Plus?
Well, I'll speak on our end real quick on building safeties for Simi Valley. Most of our implementation costs were just the staff time and our staff resources to modify our system, our existing permit system that was an online system. So we had our IT analysts actually develop a new online permit that incorporated the SolarAPP approvals. So that's unique to the jurisdiction. So different jurisdictions have different use cases. They'll absolutely have different costs. Some may have almost no costs. And especially if you adopt the full functionality of SolarAPP, which not only reviews, but I believe can issue the permit and pass the costs over to the jurisdiction, or pass the, say, the revenue off to the jurisdiction. So it depends on the jurisdiction. But again, for our cost, it was very low. It's just staff time.
I'd say the same thing for Pleasant Hill. We did not have our online system for permitting done. Solar was first. And so it was purely the staff time to implement the SolarAPP. And then later on, we're doing the integration now with our other online permitting system, but very, very low cost, just staff time.
And I'll add that there's also a training that the International Renewable Energy Council put together for inspectors on how to use SolarAPP for PV only projects and PV plus storage. It's worth continuing education units. So that's also staff time. In regards to what can be billed to essentially the CalAPP program, if a jurisdiction adopts SolarAPP and integrates it with your existing GovTech software provider, the CalAPP funds can provide for up to 3 years of subscription costs for that GovTech software provider like EnerGov or like Acela. Or if you're not on a GovTech software provider yet, or your GovTech software provider doesn't have the ability to integrate with SolarAPP, you can also use the CalAPP funds to begin that subscription as well.
Thank you. And then Aaron Reven asked if anyone can tell them if Oakland has already applied or implemented, and I think that this can be applied to how do you tell if your city or a specific city is already using this?
This is a question I can answer. Oakland has applied for the grant to work towards complying with the law, but they are not fully in compliance yet. Solar Rights Alliance is amassing a series of data points into one spot with a list of cities that have fully adopted SolarAPP Plus, are piloting SolarAPP Plus, and have applied for the grant. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat so that folks can use that resource. SolarAPP Plus itself also has a web page, adoption at a glance, where you can see all the cities across the country that are using and piloting SolarAPP Plus. We do not yet have cities that have reported to us that they are fully in compliance with SB 379 without SolarAPP Plus. Once we have that list, I will also be adding that into that spreadsheet. So that's the place folks can go for an update on everything everywhere, but I'll put both links in the chat so that people have them.
All right, working through our chat. The next one is from Inez Ibel. They asked, is SolarAPP Plus basically a plan check software? Does it issue a permit or generate/collect fees?
I know from our perspective, it does issue the permit and collect fees. It basically acts as the clearinghouse for Pleasant Hill. So once it's complete, the permit is issued through SolarAPP, and the fee goes through SolarAPP and then goes to the jurisdiction. So that's how it works in Pleasant Hill.
And for Simi Valley, it does our plan check for us. and it does our approvals, and it offloads that overhead net processing, but we still issue the permit on the Simi Valley side.
There are two versions of SolarAPP. One is standalone, where it issues the permit, collects the fee, and then sends the fee to the building department. That's what is clearly what's happening in Pleasant Hill. The other option is SolarAPP integrates with the existing GovTech software platform. This is what's happening in Simi Valley, where SolarAPP verifies code compliance, and then it's the jurisdiction software that issues a permit and collects the fee. And SolarAPP was specifically designed this way, so you make it accessible to any jurisdiction, whether you have a permitting platform up and running or whether you just have an email address.
And as also asked, where do you get /download SolarAPP Plus?
I can drop that link in the chat. solarapp.nrel.gov/register.
Denora Hernandez asked where we can find this recording. I will be sending it around to all people who registered, attended, recording, and any resources we have and contact information for our panelists. Afterwards, I'm hoping to get that sent out tomorrow. It'll also be posted to Vote Solar's webpage, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. All right, Charlie Gregg asked, as a Bay Area installer of residential PV and storage systems, we'd love to have consistency among AHJs, so looking forward to the adoption of this. However, coordination with shifting code cycles and different local adoptions of specific provisions and timing of those adoptions with local fire marshals adds a great deal of complexity, and of course, utility PTO requirements. Is there a plan for including fire codes and fire approvals?
Ted, do you want to take this one, or I can too?
Let's both take it. I'll hop in here with just some of my understanding of even the complexities with certain jurisdictions, fire issues. So again, SolarAPP can always develop forward, and we'll be in the process of developing new functionality and new procedures as time moves on, and hopefully in short time moves on. So with fire, there's no specific local fire adoption within SolarAPP at the moment, at least in our area. I do know that in some jurisdictions, let's say like LA County, the fire marshal must check solar with storage because they have a storage requirement that actually exceeds the California state fire marshal requirements in LA County. And so those add one layer of complexity to where you have to get the fire sign off. So that's not an automated process yet. We hope that will be, and we also hope that all jurisdictions will be on board with keeping the system and the requirements unified.
The requirements for PV and batteries for one and two family homes, which is what SolarAPP can handle now, hopefully multifamily homes in the future. But for single family homes, the requirements for PV and storage are the same if you're in the residential code or in the fire code. And the SolarAPP was designed to the state code, the model codes and the state codes, and is in line with the solar permitting guidebook. And I agree with the sentiment behind the question asked. The very local codes can increase complexity. Sometimes it's needed for health and safety, and that's totally understandable and reasonable. SolarAPP does have, in the event that there is a local code amendment, based off of the 4 regulatory requirements for a local code amendment: climatic, geologic, geographic, and there's one more, environmental, something like that. In the event of a local code amendment, SolarAPP does have a process to integrate that, which can be done in the a change to the fire bulletin, and that can be done during onboarding.
One note just to say about, and I think Ben, you got it spot on. When it comes to local adoptions, there are those local requirements that jurisdictions, according to state law, may adopt that exceed the California codes. Those findings have to be made, and the findings do have to be essentially the climatic, topographic, geologic. And in some cases, I would encourage jurisdictions to look at their amendments and look at their findings and to see if they can be aligned with the state fire marshal on some of these things. Yes, there are unique local circumstances, but when it comes specifically to the storage requirements, I'd like to see jurisdictions consider aligning their processes with the state fire marshal. That would make things a lot easier and a lot cleaner for everybody.
All right, we're coming up on time. So everyone that has put questions into the chat or the Q&A, I am saving those and we'll follow up with you with those answers. Thank you once again to our incredible panelists and for all of you who joined us today. We hope you found this webinar informative and useful in your efforts to accelerate solar adoption in California. Thank you so much for being so engaged and asking so many questions. Reminder that you will find more information and resources about SolarAPP Plus on Solar Rights Alliance and CALSSA's web pages, and then I will send out the email with the resources and the recording after this. We encourage all of you to stay engaged with this important topic and take action to promote this in your community. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.